Welcome to another episode of Between Two Dots, brought to you by Intention Media Corp. We have the pleasure of meeting incredible people every week and telling their stories about how they live their lives intentionally. And you never know when you're going to meet somebody or how you're going to meet them. But the funny thing is that everyone has a story. Simon Bryant came into my shop to get his car crowned, and we just started chatting. And I was blown away by his story. He recently retired from a 35-year-old medical career that included rural and remote practices in the Canadian Arctic, overseas humanitarian work, and for the past 4 years, medical assistance in dying. He dropped out of university at 17 to work and travel the world, graduated from medical school at 30, and earned a master's degree in humanities at 61. He's now writing a memoir of his professional and personal experiences of life, death, and loss. Simon considers life an opportunity to share kindness, curiosity, and right action. This was an incredible conversation. Really, really hope you enjoyed. Certainly enjoyed interviewing Simon. Welcome. Dr. Simon Bryant, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our podcast. It's a real pleasure. We had a very amazing conversation when you were in getting your car crowned at our shop, and I knew right away that I had to introduce you to Gilbert and our audience. So thanks for making the time.
Thank you, Hafiz. Thank you, Gilbert. Yeah, by crowned, you mean getting the rust prevention done.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for letting people know. Yeah, exactly. I was not putting a crown on your head. We were undercoating your vehicle. So that was a lot of fun. But where are you taking the call from today?
I'm here at home in Canmore.
Okay, Canmore, amazing. Before we started the call, you said you had just come back from a month-long sailing trip.
Yeah, I just spent the past month in the Caribbean, both learning to and sailing.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Is sailing new to you right now?
Relatively. Yeah, I just retired from 35 years of medical practice in December 31st. And
Amazing.
this was on my agenda. So
There you go. Congrats. Yeah, getting right to it. I love it.
it's
Yeah.
funny talking to strangers. I fell into part of this trip from approaching a fellow in the immigration lineup in Grenada when I was there in May because I saw my last name on his backpack. And so we struck up a conversation. And long story short, I ended up helping crew his sailboat north 700 miles.
Love that. Like just the random encounters now can like the butterfly effect will change your entire life, right?
Yeah, I wonder if everything is random or not. Most of the
Yeah.
time I'm a rationalist. I think everything is random. This is all just a chemical soup. And then other times things happen that they cause me to reassess. And it's kind of a comforting feeling, actually. A little bit, spooky, but comforting.
Mm. Yeah, no, that is nice for sure. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to kind of diving deeper into your mind and how you work and all that as well too. But let's start at the beginning.
Sure.
Simon, where were you born and what was life
Oh,
like growing up?
yeah. I was born in Coventry, England, and my family, myself, my two brothers and parents came over from England on a boat when I was 3 year old. So it was apparently a rough crossing. I got some salt water in my blood, maybe. And then we lived in Eastern Canada, Halifax, Dartmouth, before moving to Montreal, where I went to school in French and became fluently bilingual, English, French. And that took me through till a point where I went off to university at 17. From Quebec, you could go to Ontario and get straight into university. Sort of started a pre-engineering degree and dropped out. It wasn't for me at the time. Spent 8 years traveling the world and doing very different jobs all over. And then eventually I picked up my life and moved to Vancouver.
Yeah. You covered quite a bit there. Do you have siblings then?
I have two brothers. One is still alive, my brother John. My middle brother David died by suicide in 2012.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then so you were the youngest?
I'm the youngest. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a real feature, I think, in my youth because I should explain right away that my parents, an early formative influence was our libertarian parents, if you could call them that. They had a very unique, I think, approach to parenting, very hands-off, especially for myself as the younger. But to illustrate, when John, the eldest, was 17, he traveled around the world on his own. hitchhiking, jumping trains, arranging passage on freighters across the Pacific, and taking the rare plane, and then a bus through the Khyber Pass in Afghanistan, just because he'd always wanted to. Made his way around the world that summer when he was 17.
Wow.
While he was doing that, I was cycling alone on my 10-speed bicycle from Montreal to Vancouver, 100 miles a day. Periodically call and collect home to let my parents know I was okay. That was kind of normal for our household.
Oh my God. Did you say 10 years old?
I was 13 at the time.
13 years old, traveling from Montreal to Vancouver on a bike.
I still have a newspaper clipping from Trail, BC, with a picture of myself. And I whenever I look at it, I marvel. I just marvel. I mean, it was a different era, right? This was around 1972 or so, just post 60s. I mean, there were hitchhiker hostels federally funded across the country. I stopped at one in Medicine Hat actually and got briefly, I think I was arrested. I'm not sure, but the police arrived and took me down to the station. Called my parents in the middle of the night or something, and when the constable was very annoyed with my parents. They said, you can't let him do this. He should at least have a letter with him saying that he's okay.
Wow.
And then I had to cycle back to the hostel because the constable had insisted I bring my bicycle with me. I wanted to leave it at the hostel and told him, and you're going to bring me back here after because, you've no right to apprehend me. But he insisted he did. So I was actually in a cell with the door open. And then he wouldn't let me talk to my parents. Went on the phone, Very annoying to me, isn't that? Anyway.
That's wild. Were you traveling solo or with the group?
No, I was solo, totally solo.
Jeez.
Very flexible. I could find, odd places to sleep. And across the prairies, I crashed like a big Sunday dinner. I was hanging out in a picnic shelter in a park in a small town somewhere in Saskatchewan. And somebody chanced by and, of course, talking to strangers. I got invited to the Sunday dinner where I proceeded to eat so much that I think I had to rest for 12 hours after. I lost 14 pounds in the course of that trip, despite eating as much as I could at every opportunity. 100 miles a day is a lot.
Yeah. That's quite unusual. In my opinion, I mean, that's a decent clip. And so the idea about, going across country on a bike when you're 13, so you may mention it's because you moved to Vancouver. Is that?
No, I had to convince my parents to let me do that. I moved to Vancouver when I was 22. I put everything I owned, really, tools and things, into a great big crate and shipped it to Vancouver, and then flew and caught up with it. I was looking for a kind of a geographic reset because I felt I was in a bit of a rut in Montreal. I should mention too, we grew up with no television by choice. Lots of books in the house, no television, tools, materials to make things out of, and just like that. So I felt a little bit out of step with my peers when they talk about television shows and things. Couldn't register with that.
Yeah. What did your parents do for work then?
Yeah, my dad was a professor of geography, urban geography specifically. And my mom was first a physical education teacher and then primary school teacher.
Amazing. You hear about some of the new age way of schooling today, and Gilbert and Doreen can, attest to this as well too, about the Montessori style, with the hands-on learning, limited screen times, like all that social connection, working with your senses and stuff like that. You had like this amazing journey at 13 years old. So you say that you lost 14 pounds, but you probably gained, 15 years worth of wisdom right there doing that. Like, I can't even imagine what you went through to go all across the country on a bike, 10 speed, no less.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is insane. Yeah, it's just, that's mind blowing to me. Like we talked that entire hour at my shop, and I didn't know that till right now. So that's
Oh, I
wild.
see. Yeah. Okay. And then in Vancouver, actually, I happened to run into the back of a Volkswagen Bug without damaging it, but trashed the bicycle, and then hitchhiked out to Long Beach and built myself a little shelter on Long Beach. Stayed there for a few days. I finally took a train home.
Yeah, wow. And what was life like coming back home from that? Do you remember?
Well, it was the summertime. I was still in high school, so back to school and back to the grind. But it wasn't really a grind. I never found school difficult. Just kind of a little puzzling.
So this was just a summer adventure. You're like, and this is something that you came up with the idea for, and then you're like, you go to your parents and you tell them that you're going to ride across the country on a bike. And
we'd taken a family trip, actually. David, my just older brother, and myself and the parents, we'd taken the train out west when I was 11, and I'd seen what was there. I mean, it was fascinating. So when I picked up at 22, put everything in the box and arrived in Vancouver, life took a different turn very quickly. Within 2 days, I'd found a place to live and a job. Actually worked as a architectural and engineering model maker. And kind of a long story short, my boss almost killed us all by accident in Kitimat when he lost control of a vehicle on a snowy road. We were up there on an insurance claim fixing a big model that we had created and for the Alcan smelter. And after that, it was kind of like an eye opener, because I was sitting in the front passenger seat. I really thought, that I was eating my last bran muffin and drinking my last coffee because there was a truck coming the other way, and we did hit it. It didn't hit us. A full-on, head-on collision was imminent, it seemed, with this tractor trailer. But we all walked away and totaled the car. And after that, I decided to work overseas. And I found work with Canada World Youth. I got a job as a group leader, spent 2 years with them, Indonesia and Sri Lanka, Alberta and Ontario. And after that, I decided, well, it's time to go back to school. So I went back to university, did 4-year undergraduate degree combining psychology and biology. And along the way, I saw my peers, my fellow students, I should say, because I was 27 by then. I saw them, heading for med school or hoping for, and I thought, well, I could probably do that. I had a couple of mentors through my youth, physicians, both physicians. One I met when he was a pediatric resident at, I was 11 years old or something. He was good friends with my best friend's mother. And I actually kept in touch with him for 51 years until tragically he died at 75 rather suddenly, just days before his second wedding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a very sad event. I rode my motorcycle out to Vancouver to attend the wedding, and from Vancouver I phoned ahead, and his fiancée said, "Oh, thank you. We've been trying to reach you, didn't know how. We've been trying to call you." And she gave me the sad news, But she said, "Everyone's coming together anyway, and we'd very much appreciate you being there." So I continued on my journey to Hornby Island, where there was a big celebration of life for him. Yeah.
What were some of the greatest lessons that he taught you?
Dave Wiseman was a very personable and open fellow. He loved to talk to people, and he was always, he was mostly happy most of the time, and adventurous. He went to work in Africa for a few years, and he did a lot of good work.
Yeah,
my other mentor was a fellow named Robert Shepard, a GP turned psychiatrist, who he founded a sort of halfway home for discharged psychiatric patients and others in that sort of boat just outside Montreal in a rural area. And I actually had a job there for a couple of years, working sort of with people and in the woods, and building structures and just getting out there, growing food. It was not long after that I moved to Vancouver and life took off, back to work. global work, and then back to school and medical school. It's all gone very quickly, Gilbert.
Yeah. Where did you go to med school then?
So undergraduate psychology and biology in Montreal, and then med school in Calgary at University of Calgary. I was accepted at McGill and Dalhousie, and then chose the West because I have an affinity for this part of the world. And they had an adult learning approach. They gave us a office and the keys to the city, as it were, and just told us, you're going to be graduating in 3 years, no breaks, no summer breaks. You're adults, off you go, So 3 weeks after the first day of medical school, I was scrubbed into cardiac surgery, and the surgeon invited me to just put my fingers on this person's heart and feel the vibrations of the blood flowing through this narrowed valve. And then it was a valve replacement procedure that I watched at week 3. That patient sadly died after.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful stuff, getting thrown into it like that. And when you explain it, when they take that adult approach, it does make a lot of sense, especially when you're coming at it at an elder age as well too. Like, you want to get right into it, and it sounds like the work that you were doing, you're there to make impact and get right to it. But I want to take one step back before we talk about med school. You talked about your travels with some of the youth programming across the world. What was that work like, and how did you get into that?
Well, actually, after that car accident incident in Kitimat, I came back to Vancouver, and I looked for the office of Project Plowshares because I trained as a metal worker, and I thought, I have an opportunity to volunteer overseas. So I went looking for the office of Project Plowshares, which some may recognize as a charity. It's in the same building as Canada World Youth, and I walked into the wrong office by mistake. The person behind the desk thrust an application form at me and said I had 48 hours to complete it, but that she did not have any time to explain anything. So I walked away with this application form and did some quick research and filled out the application form, got an interview, and accepted the job. So it was an international youth exchange program focusing on development education. Kind of 4.5 months in Alberta with a group from Indonesia, and then everybody picks up and goes back to small village in Indonesia for 4.5 months. And after that one contract, they invited me back for a second, and another exchange with between Ontario and Sri Lanka. And after that, I traveled around a bit in Asia and Nepal, Japan, India. And then, as I say, came back and went to school. Saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah. So in those instances, what was the situation? So were you compensated for your work there, or like?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was the group leader. That was my position. I just made the 23-year-old cutoff, minimum age to be a group leader. I was well compensated. There was no way to spend any money, and so I amassed quite a nest egg to fund my university thereafter. Yeah.
All because you walked into the wrong building.
Yeah, the right building, wrong office.
Right building.
It's a serendipity. It's funny how things work,
Yeah. No, I feel like that's a common thread in your story. You could just, it sounds like you just like go with it. You have an idea, something happens, maybe it kind of takes you a different way, but do you course correct, or you just like, you know what, I'm supposed to be here now and I'm going for it?
Do I course correct? Well, no, I set an intention, and I think if I set an intention in a certain direction, it's likely to happen, but not necessarily. Sometimes things just come out of the blue. Many years back, I was backcountry skiing, and I had taken recreational avalanche safety training, but I did set off a decent size 2 avalanche, and I managed to ski out of it, and then decided I better learn more or stop. So I thought, well, first I'll learn more and then I'll decide. And in the course of taking some professional level avalanche training, I caught wind of an opportunity to be the duty dock and at a heli skiing operation in BC. So I did that part-time for 8 years, trained as a tail guide. That's it's an interesting example. I try to
Hmm.
balance kind of selfish, frivolous things like that with service.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was great. I got totally spoiled and made some very good friends. But then I'm always conscious in this world of, the people who aren't so fortunate as I, I mean, sort of middle class, open-minded parents, maybe. I feel I've been very fortunate. And I've traveled enough, and especially in those early years, I traveled enough to appreciate that it is not like that for so many people.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, that's good awareness to kind of take that forward with you as well too. And as Gilbert has two young children, and I'm freshly a dad as well too. And you're thinking about these things. What kind of parent do you want to be? And expose your children to certain things so that they become the best versions of themselves as well too. And it's wild hearing you some of the stuff that you've done. Your parents. You say they were mostly hands off, but while you're going through your escapades and going through that, it sounds like your eldest brother as well too kind of set the tone because he was doing a bunch of that as well too with hitchhiking across the world and stuff like that. So were they just like used to it by the time they got to you? They're like, okay, this is just
Yeah,
like in
probably,
their DNA.
they were worn down. Yeah, John continued in that vein. When he was 26, he got a very small sailboat, 26-foot sailboat, and he and his girlfriend sailed that across the Atlantic and back. Spent 2 years on it, traveling through the canals of Europe and the Caribbean. So there's a bit of that in maybe, British maritime something in our blood.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think we're capable of many things that we don't know until we try. Just keep an
Mm.
open mind and, stay safe, but proceed. Well, I mean, life's a one-time deal opportunity. It's a question of what
Yeah.
we do with it. That
Mhm.
sort of brings me to this notion of doing the right thing, which I've been trying to have as a guiding principle for some time.
Yeah. So you finished med school in Calgary. You mentioned you started working in Calgary, and and did you spend the majority of your career there after, or
Oh, Gilbert,
between?
I've never really had a sort of standard medical job or career. I've really been quite free to pick up and try one thing or another. So I spent just a few months working in offices around Calgary and realized that really wasn't for me. And I became one of the first so-called hospitalists in Canada, which is a physician who specializes in working in a hospital full time, accepting and admitting patients who either don't have a family doctor or whose family doctor doesn't want to work in the hospital. I did that for almost 10 years. There's a great, education because I was able to consult with and access all the different specialists. And, we had something like a 2 week on, 2 week off schedule. And in my 2 weeks off, I'd go and work all over Alberta in small towns, emergency departments and small town clinics. Um, so I was never a medical business person. I was always a freelance contractor.
Yeah.
I spent about 10 years working in Nunavut in the Canadian Arctic with the Inuit population, just flying up there to small towns, or small hamlets, really, 900, 1,000 people, and serving as physician there. Also managed a couple of stints with Doctors Without Borders, first in 2015. Um, I worked on a search and rescue ship in the Mediterranean. We a small team, and we I think we pulled about 7,000 people out of those little rubber dinghies and old wooden fishing boats and through the season, through the summer.
Mhm.
It was difficult work in many ways. Partly the contrast of it, because we'd end up with 400 or 500 people aboard and working very hard, and then bring them back to Sicily or southern Italy, and disembark them, swab the decks literally, and then go ashore and basically eat too much and get drunk, and then we'd get back aboard and sail south and do it all over again. all summer. Just that contrast, between the privilege and the suffering and the misery that you deal with.
Mm-hmm. The people that you were taking out of the water, I'm assuming they were looking for refuge somewhere else.
Yeah, asylum seekers, variously called beneficiaries or migrants, but they're asylum seekers trying to get to Europe in order to better their lives. And there's a whole range of people, a whole range. A chunk of them were, I forget the exact numbers, but several hundred under the age of 5 out of those 7,000. They didn't, they're just blameless. They haven't done anything in the world to warrant, that kind of outcome for them. Toward the end of that year, I don't know if you recall, there was a terrible incident where there was a boat capsized off the coast of Europe, and this young Kurdish boy was washed up on the beach dead. Alan Kurdi, I believe, and his brother also. Speaking of that, after that summer, I arrived back in Canmore, and then 2 days later, I think October 3rd, 2015, the United States Air Force inadvertently destroyed the MSF hospital in Kunduz in northern Afghanistan, and that really, really bothered me. I vowed I would go and work in Afghanistan, which I did in 2018. But it also got me thinking, there's no firewalls anywhere in this world between cause and effect. Everything's influencing everything else. How did that come about? What have they done or not done? I'm an adult, I'm responsible for myself. I can make choices, and this has happened in the world in which I live, so that question sort of stuck with me. I took it with me a few years ago to I enrolled in after Afghanistan. When I came back, I enrolled in that was 2018. I spent the year there in southern Afghanistan, overseeing emergency department and intensive care in Lashkar Gah, the provincial capital of Helmand province. It's all Taliban territory, but the town itself was not nominally not Taliban run. And when I got back, I actually enrolled in a humanities program, master's degree at Memorial University. I was just sort of investigating this whole question of responsibility, right action. What is the opportunity of life? And subsequently, as soon as medical assistance in dying became legal in 2016, June of 2016, I did sign up shortly after, to provide, to do assessments for medical assisted death, and to do the deed, to do the procedure. As it happened in those early years, I didn't end up actually ending anybody's life, but I did some assessments, and then I got busy with other things, working in Afghanistan, for example, and elsewhere. But after my master's degree and after COVID, then I sort of reapplied and re-entered, and that aspect of medical work, and that was my full-time work over the past about 3 years. I tapered off everything else, and then I pursued that on a full-time basis. And then I've retired as I say, at the end of last year.
This episode is brought to you by Bloom Benefits Group. Bloom Benefits is disrupting employee benefits by rethinking the status quo. They provide exceptional customer service while saving you money. Bloom offers group benefits and retirement products, health and wellness accounts, executive benefits, life insurance, and disability and critical illness. Available to companies across Canada, Bloom helps clients save money without interrupting current plans. Check them out at bluebenefits.ca.
Young professionals, families, and entrepreneurs. What makes Zelos Investment Counsel different? Our independence, client focus, and access. Zelos Investment Counsel is independent from banks and brokerages, which ensures clients' best interests are served without corporate conflicts. We are fiduciary portfolio managers with a duty to clients that doesn't exist in the brokerage model. At Zelos Investment Counsel, we exist to care for our clients, and every day we strive to help our clients reach their goals. We provide our clients with access to institutional investment managers and sector specialists through our proprietary investment structure. For more information, book your no obligation meeting today at zelosglobal.com. That's www.zelosglobal.com.
Attention all car owners. Is the winter weather turning your beloved ride into a rusty relic? Fear not, because we've got the solution you've been dreaming of. Crown Rust Protection. Picture this. Your car defying the elements, standing strong against rust like a knight in shining armor. Crown Rust Protection is not just a shield. It's an investment in the longevity and resale value of your vehicle. Don't let rust take the wheel. Book your Crown Rust Protection treatment today and let your car embrace its inner superhero. Call now at 403-291-1951 or book your appointment at www.krown.com. Our skilled technicians are ready to give your car the VIP treatment it deserves. Crown Rust Protection, because your car deserves to age like fine wine, not rusty vinegar.
Well,
I've talked a lot. You have questions.
Oh, yeah, so many. Like, what a journey that has been. First of all, I love the fact that you're a lifelong learner. Like, you just pop into like master's programs, and then you're like, yeah, I just had a question, enrolled, and not only do you enroll, but you finish what you start. It sounds like.
Yeah, I finished it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so that's pretty incredible. So you're incredibly educated, you're incredibly inquisitive. Like you're constantly asking questions, and you're driven by a higher purpose of doing good. And it's wild to me. You don't meet too many people like yourself, Simon, that say that they've just traveled here and done this kind of work and come back and came back to reality of their jobs here, and then all of a sudden another opportunity comes up and they're gone across the world and serving humanity. Like I think we live in our own little bubbles, and we get old in our bubbles as well too. And as that happens, you get more comfortable and more rigid in our bubbles. But it sounds like you're very open to life and where that's taking you. And to be on the forefront of medical assisted death is incredible to me as well too. Can you walk us through why you chose to get into that in the first place? And then, we talked about this briefly at the shop. Like today's world is wrought with people that have mental health issues. It's with social media, after COVID, the world kind of in chaos. Like there's just despair everywhere. And you don't hear a lot about suicide because it's never reported, which boggles my mind still. You hear about obituaries in the papers or whatever. Never ever talk about suicides. But when you got into the field, when you're doing these assessments, what type of people are applying for medically assisted death typically? And as an assessor, you now are holding that opportunity to say yes or no, we're going to do this. Like what kind of responsibility is that?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you. I'll take what you just said as a compliment, the first part of it, before your question. Yeah, sometimes I feel a little different from the rest of the crowd. But that said, there are so many extraordinary people out there. This is like, I don't feel this interview is even totally about me. There are many other extraordinary people. My two mentors, whom I mentioned earlier, colleagues, just everybody, right? Yourselves, here you are, taking this initiative to foster communication, sharing of ideas. Everybody has a special something to share with others. I don't put people on a hierarchy in any way, in terms of education or anything else. Now, where were you? You were asking me to talk about medical assistance in dying and why I got into that. Mm-hmm. It's, I guess, a matter of natural justice. Even like in medical school, I could appreciate that, a lot of things didn't make sense. We had a lot of ability to prolong life, but there was often, significant suffering associated with that. We didn't seem to be able to, I want to acknowledge the excellent work that palliative care physicians have done, and what I learned from them also, and nurses. But still, end of life is a difficult time, and sometimes it's just, there's more suffering involved than palliative care can reasonably handle. When I was working as a hospitalist, I did serve on an ethics consultation committee. That's a committee that's trained in, the members are trained in ethical thinking, and we're available to anybody who wants to raise an issue. Anyone from the janitor to nursing, medical practitioners, nursing staff, family members, patients. And they brought a case that came before us of a gentleman who suffered very tragically from something called Pick's disease, which is a form of dementia, which is often leaves people quite incapacitated, but unfortunately very aggressive physically, and very aggressive, kind of a disinhibiting dementia. This person was in their 30s, if I'm not mistaken, and he'd gotten to a point where he would literally attack his own children when they came to visit, and it was becoming difficult to actually feed him. So we were consulted on this, and to make it. In the end, we recommended, or we identified the option of what's called terminal sedation or palliative sedation. It goes by different names, whereby somebody is literally sedated and they die within days of dehydration. I guess it's a peaceful, non-suffering death for them. Difficult for everybody around because, for example, we debriefed the whole unit. We briefed and debriefed everybody working on that unit. This was in the years long before assisted death. So terminal sedation has always been a tool of palliative care for end of life when people are riddled with cancer and suffering. These days, assisted death happens in about 1 in 20 deaths across Canada. 5% of all deaths across Canada occur with medical assistance. Like roughly speaking, 3/4 of those people have a cancer diagnosis, or slightly less than that. Average age is 77. Most have had excellent access to excellent palliative care. For the most part, it's become a sort of go-to end-of-life option for those people who choose it in that situation. Terminal illnesses, natural death reasonably foreseeable. 95% of the applicants, last year and years before, their natural death is reasonably foreseeable, meaning they're on a trajectory towards death without any other intervention. About 5% or a bit less, their natural death is not reasonably foreseeable. They might have, very chronic conditions. Ever since 2021 with Bill C-7, law has been changed to allow for assisted death for people whose natural death is not reasonably foreseeable. Those are complicated assessments in many cases.
Yeah.
So why I chose to do that work is that I'd always been aware of the Netherlands, the example they set, and I'd seen how difficult end of life can be despite excellent palliative care, and I just thought, well, this makes sense. This makes perfect sense.
Yeah. You mentioned that you have everyone in very high regard. You don't necessarily put anyone, including yourself, on a pedestal. But I guess you also likely appreciate the fact that you do have skills that not everyone possesses. And is that what drove you to take those skills to different places to utilize them, like rural places, overseas, that sort of stuff? Like, was that something that you realized was in short supply and you had a specialized skill as a result?
Right. Thank you for that question. Because more recently, I've been sort of retroactively, examining my motivation. It's difficult, of course, with memory. A lot of my life has been driven by sort of ego-driven adventurism and seeking recognition and novelty. But it's interesting, when I was in the Mediterranean in 2015, we did a lot of interviews. I did a lot of interviews all over the world by satellite off the ship, because we usually had a reporter aboard and a camera person, and we could link up by satellite and give interviews all over to publicize what was happening. And somebody asked me why I did that, and it came right off my tongue. I just said, well, the reasons I started aren't the reasons I continue. Like, I got into it because I thought, well, this will be really cool. And then soon after experiencing these tragic stories and being able to help people back to land, literally, as I couldn't stop, and it doesn't, at that point, it wasn't, I don't mean to sound, I don't know, unrealistic, but it wasn't so much about me as about them. So I was the person there to do the job fine, and in my life and with medical assisted dying work for the last several months of it, if somebody else was available to take over, it's like, great, take it away. But if something needs doing and nobody else is doing it, it's like, well, why not me? Why not now? And it's kind of a Zen thing, if not you, who? If not now, when? Along the way, I'm not a religious person. We were in a very secular household. It was very rationalist. There was no particular religious background. When in the course of my master's degree, because I'd come and go as I chose, to do work, and occasionally in the summer, I think of 2019, I flew to Japan to visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the atomic, bombing memorials and museums there, because it fascinated me, the whole idea. At one point in my teenage years, I think I was, I don't know, my late teens, 16, 17 or other, I went to Europe and visited Auschwitz and Lourdes. I was looking for the worst and best of humanity. And no comment about that. But in Japan, I visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then I spent a week in a little temple stay place. We'd get up every morning, meditate for 2 hours, and have tea, and sit for another 2 hours. And the habit stuck. It just stuck. I still do to this day. Every day I take half an hour and I sit. Just silent meditation. No particular technique or mantra or anything. And I'm just aware that I'm alive and that thoughts are coming and going. Thoughts about whatever. The news, what I plan to do next week, whatever. But I'm fundamentally aware that I'm alive. This is the one opportunity I have. And in any given situation, I can either change it, leave it, or accept it. And sometimes when I look at the overall situation, and feel the overall situation in the world, it's like, yeah, something needs doing here. I can do it, so I'll do it. And like I said, I try to find a balance between, play and what you might call work.
Yeah.
I've, by choice and by chance, I don't have children of my own. I became quite involved with my 2 young nephews. The youngest was 17 when my brother David died by suicide. And he's now 31. I've helped him, I believe, and so he's told me through the years to kind of find his way, and he's doing very well now.
It's amazing that you were able to kind of step in that manner. ultimately it's interesting because, your brother that passed and the people that you had worked with, not, there's people that are suffering, right? And you've played a part in limiting and ending that suffering as well, right? So
I hope, at least, mitigating, trying to do something.
mhm.
It's like process is more important than outcome. I don't know if that rings a bell. And many people have tackled that question from different angles, but if you're sort of focused on an outcome, well, it doesn't necessarily work. And in the course of trying to, achieve your goal, you can sometimes inadvertently cause harm. And, like doing the right thing it's a constant task to try and discern what the immediate circumstances require of us. The same action can be the right thing and the wrong thing in two different circumstances. One of my not a mentor but a hero of mine is Terry Fox. He's got a very memorable quote. He said, it took cancer to make me realize that it's not about me. The thing is, the answer is to try to help others.
Yeah, no, that's a great quote, and
I love it.
And wise words to live by as well too. Sam, it sounds like obviously your story, you're very intentional with the way you live, how you've lived, how you continue to live. You're now getting into well-earned retirement, and I don't even know if you're calling it retirement because you're working on other things. You mentioned earlier, I mean, you have such an incredible journey and a story. You have to be writing this down, and people need to hear about it. So a memoir is in the works, correct?
Yes, I'm writing a memoir of the past 10 years. 2015, Mediterranean, search and rescue, to the end of 2025, retirement from medicine, and everything in between.
Amazing.
I mean, there's more to the story. Of course, there's a personal side to it. It's funny, death has always, unfortunately, been sort of close. Maybe by choice in some instances, but with my brother's death by suicide, subsequently in my medical work, it's everywhere. In the north, for example, in Nunavut, I mean, the rate of suicide there is literally 10 times the Canadian average, and more like 25 to 30 times the national average for men between 15 and 35. And then assisted death work is humbling. It's nothing to do with suicide. It's a different kind of death altogether, but it still is humbling to be in that position to try to help people at that point in their life. And then I pondered whether I should mention this or not. But over the past few years, I've been in relationship with a woman who's had the great misfortune to have 2 adult children die by suicide.
Well,
and that overlapped with my medical assistance in dying work, and so it created some deep thought and, of course, problems. I mean, issues between us. It is all working through. We are happily together, looking forward to the future. But it's been a tremendous education that I never thought I would have in life and death. To have the privilege to share with people who are seeking an assisted death, and to sort of have life circumstances put me in the position I've been in for the past while. Sounds a bit vague, but there it is,
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for what's to come. It sounds like there's a lot more stories to be told.
Look for the book. My working title is Doing Life and Death.
Love it.
Yeah, because life is to be done, wholeheartedly. I mean, it's easy to, I think, to get sidetracked into the routine. Sounds strange, but we each have a purpose and a path, and if we allow ourselves, we can find it, follow it. There are those little moments, little opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to strangers, stay curious, be safe, but take advantage of the opportunity of being alive. And I think, as the Dalai Lama said, yeah, trying to make yourself happy is a very laudable and worthwhile goal, and I wholly support it, but just be cautious. What you think will make you happy isn't necessarily what will. I'm with Terry Fox. Just try to help others, be kind to others, drive courteously, smile. Sort of, there's enough negativity, and if we all sort of create some positive ripples, I think they summate into something big, something better. So try to do the right thing. That's what I'm asking myself. What next? So for me, the right thing to do next is, be kind to the people around me, share my experience, listen to others, and write this book so that I can hopefully help people keep their minds open and work towards a better collective situation, because we need something. We need everybody's activity. I'm a big fan of saying that, that the actual situation that we find ourselves in today is the product of the decisions and actions, or lack of actions, of 1 or 2 generations.
Mm-hmm.
We could all collectively change it if we could see our way to doing so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, those are all wise words, and I think that the world we live in today has a easy way of numbing us to inaction sometimes as well too. Whether it's just blasting you with things on social media, or TV shows that grasp your attention, and creating other addictions that come along with it as well too. Whether it's substance or electronics or whatever that looks like. So a lot of what you said, how you grew up, without television, with some of these mature influences in your life as well too, talking about doing good and offering you the ability to get out there and explore and having this kind of purpose in mind. It's all landing very, very, very strongly right now, at least to me. Um, I think it's very cool what you're doing. Like, I can't wait to read that book. Um, do you have any? So you said be kind and live with purpose. I'm going to ask you. So going back to what we started talking about earlier, Gilbert's kids are listening. Your nephew's listening. My daughter's listening. What are a few things that you would tell them to live their life more purposely beyond that?
Well, part of being curious is that's how we learn. We learn by being curious. Ask questions. There aren't necessarily easy answers, but ask big questions, and stay nimble. At the same time, commitment is essential to get things done. Set a direction, but it's like sailing. I guess you set a direction, but the wind and the waves and many other things are going to determine your precise course and actually how things turn out. Life's like that. But set a direction, have an intention that you can look back on, because time passes so quickly. It's astonishing to me how I can envision something happening. I just went to Les Miserables yesterday, the performance in Calgary. And at one time I had bought tickets and it was months away, and suddenly it's over. So many things in life are like that. We imagine a future that doesn't necessarily happen that way, but we can set a direction. But just remember that time passes, we change, everything changes. We can still head in a general direction of living a life that we will look back on without regret, with satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, congratulations on all the things, the career, the life to date, and really really stoked to hear it come together in a memoir. So that's really exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Really, really appreciate you coming on to our show. Is there anything that you would present as a way for people to either get a hold of you or keep an eye out for the book, or if there's any opportunities that you want to, let people know about, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Like the working title for my book is Doing Life and Death Equally. And my name, Simon T. Bryant. You can Google me now. You'll find stuff from the Mediterranean, and we never publicized anything from Afghanistan, but I was there. If people if we bump into each other, just chat, ask questions, keep your ears open. I'll let you know when there's a book available.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to that.
Maybe we can do an interview after you've read it.
That'd be great. Would love that. Yeah, I think we've just scratched the surface with you. There's so much to peel back on as well too. But thank you very much for letting us into your life and your journey. So incredibly inspiring. But again, thank you, Simon. We wish you all the best. Congratulations on the memoir. Let us know when that is live. We'll definitely share that on our socials and to our audience, and I for sure will read it. And Gilbert and I always talk about life and death. And that's what the premise of this whole show was based on, was to have conversations about intention. So you have just teed it up and made this even more powerful. This is literally why we made this program, is for individuals like you.
Yes, thank you. Between the dots.
There you go.
Yeah. And thank you both. Thank you also to your listeners. Wouldn't be much of a show without them.
100%.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. We'll take care. We'll see you around. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Between Two Dots by Intention Media. This podcast is co-hosted by myself, Gilbert Bong, and Hafiz Mita. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and review wherever you listen.